All right, we're getting ready to start chapter 5. This is 5.1, division patterns with decimals. And before we actually get started, make sure you've gone back and you've completed the chapter opener, page 199 and 200, that shows what you know. It's stuff from before. Make sure you get that done as well. And then we're going to jump into this long division. In the last chapter, we talked about multiplication, and we had a lot of multiplication patterns. So real quick, just as a reminder, we noticed that if a number, say the number 5, is multiplied by a number larger than 1, then our answer seems to grow, our product grows. Okay, this is a number larger than 1. And 1 is kind of our primary target here. When we multiply by 1, the number stays the same. And when we multiply by a number smaller than 1, we notice that our answer tended to get smaller. This is an equal sign. 5 times 2 is 10, and ends up being 1.0 because we've got one decimal place to put back in. So here the 5 gets 7 times bigger. When you multiply by 1, the 5 stays exactly the same. And when you multiply by a decimal, 2/10 in this case, we get 1.0, and the 5 goes down to an even smaller number. All right, does that kind of make sense? We have big numbers. We grow when we multiply by big numbers. We stay the same when we multiply by 1. And we get smaller when we multiply by numbers smaller than 1. And what we need to see is that with division is just backwards multiplication. And exactly the opposite happens. Say we start with 35. And we divide by 7. We get 5. Okay, 5 times 7 is 35, so 35 divided by 7 is 5. And so this is getting smaller, right? When we divide by a number bigger than 1, 7 is bigger than 1, then our answer, 35, starts at 35 and it becomes 5. If we take that same number, 35, and we divide by 1, instead of getting smaller, it remains the same. Okay, see that? It's the same. Now, here's the crazy thing that some of you will have a hard time with. When you take that same number and you divide by a number smaller than 1, say 0.7, 7/10, we're actually going to get a number bigger. It's going to actually grow. So we started with 5 and we got 35, and we divide by 0.7, it's going to actually become 50. And the reason I know this is because if I do this in reverse and I multiply 50 times 0.7, okay, I can remove the decimal and just go 7 times 0, 7 times 5 is 35, and then put the decimal place back in. The answer is 35. So 50 times 0.7 is 35. So I've shown this to be true using multiplication. This shows me that when I divide by a number smaller than 1, my answer, actually the product, or the quotient, the answer to the division problem gets bigger. So it's the opposite of multiplication. And once we know that, we can start to make sense of all the patterns that we're going to see. Okay, the book has a bunch of patterns for us. You get numbers like 560 times 1 equals 560. They're going to do the same thing. 1 is a magic number. We always have to remember that. 560 times 0.1 is equal to 56.0. Now our decimal moved one place. It moved over here, so it's 56. It gets smaller. Take 560, multiply by 100th. We get 5.6 or 5.60. We can keep that 0 in there to help us remember our place, and so on. When we divide, it does kind of the opposite, and I just showed you that with some smaller numbers, but we're going to see that it happens here. 560 divided by 1 equals 560. Magic number 1. Every time I see 1, I want to point it out because we have to see that. The numbers bigger than 1 do one thing. The numbers smaller than 1 do the opposite of that. Okay, so 1 stays the same. And then we do 560 divided by 10. We actually get 56.0. Okay, and we do 560 divided by 100, we get 5.60. So when we divide by 1, divide by 10, divide by 100, we keep getting, we just can move that decimal over. It's here, and then we move it 1 for the 10. We move it 2 for the 100. And remember that it works the same way with the powers. Okay, we can say 560 divided by 10 to the 0 power, which equals 1. It's just 560. Oops, not 550. Okay, 560 divided by 10 to the first power is the same as dividing by 10, and that is moving it one place, which is 56.0. This is actually easier to see how many times you move the decimal. Here you don't move it at all because it's equal to 1. Here you move it one place. It's 1 power of 10. You move the decimal one place, but you have to move it smaller when you divide. Okay, and then 560 divided by 100 is actually 10 to the second power. Here we used 100, here we're using 10 to the second power, and we move the decimal 2 places. So it starts over here at the end of 560 and moves 2 places in, so it's 5.60. We can see the pattern shaping up. And what we need to see is that 10 to the 0 is 1, 10 to the first power is 10, 10 to the second power is 2 powers of 10 equal 100. 10 times 10. It's 2 tens. So it's 2 place values. So the decimal slides 2 slots over. And you just have to be able to figure out which way it goes. And that's the big deal. Otherwise, this lesson just goes just like last chapter. And it's pretty easy because we're not multiplying by decimal factors of 1. We're going to get to that. But today we're just going to do kind of regular stuff. 12.7 divided by 1 equals what? 12.7 divided by 10 equals what? 12.7 divided by 100 equals what? Well, when we divide by 1, we know it's just 12.7. When you divide by 10, that's 1 power of 0, so the decimal moves over 1 place. When you divide by 100, it moves over 1 more place. So the decimal keeps moving, and you just have to remember that when you divide by a number bigger than 1, your quotient gets smaller. It started at 127, or 12.7, make sure I can see that decimal, and it moved 2 places over when you divide by 100, because 100 is a power of 10, twice, 2 powers of 10. And if we use the similar, we use something like, say we got 32 divided by 10 to the 0, that would be 32, because 10 to the 0 is 1 power of 10. 32 divided by 10 to the first power would be 3.2. We divide by 10, it gets smaller. 32 divided by 10 to the second power, this is 2 powers of 0, or 100. My little doggy thinks it's really important to bark right now and mess up my video. I hope you're laughing. I hope you're enjoying my little dog messing up my video. Take a little break, eat a cookie, till he stops doing that so that I can continue. Okay, 32 divided by 10 to the second power, we move it over 1 more place, 0.32. Okay, that works pretty good. That's just how it goes. Everything works that way. All right, have a great day. Enjoy your lesson.